we got a special guest. The guy that I think could give us more insights than anybody. I'm so excited on the potential for a silver squeeze. Okay, you're never going to guess who it is. He's a fan favorite. Even my mom watches the live stream. She's like, that's my your favorite guest that you have. No offense to any of our other guests. She loves them as well. But let's get him on here. Hold on. Hello, Jon.
Hey, what's up? I'm not in the basement. I'm close though. Ron, I'm going to talk to you about $20,000 gold in China, but whatever you want to talk about, I'm really a big fan of your basement dwellers.
Thank you, Jon. And as I introduced you, really, you're a guy who, in my opinion, has his hand on the pulse of what's going on in the silver and gold market around the world as much as anybody. And when it comes to talking about the potential for a silver squeeze, I mean, you're involved with Wall Street Silver on Reddit, right? You're involved with the Silver Degen Club. Jon is also an accomplished writer and author. He's got a great Substack. I always have a link to the Silver Academy Substack in every one of my videos and live streams. I use information I get from you probably at least 4 times a week. And I know you've given me permission to do that during my live streams because you put out the good info. I'm going to shut up. I would like to hear from you about whatever you want to talk about, because you've got insights like nobody else about this $20,000 gold, and then I want to get a feel from you about am I crazy feeling like the silver squeeze movement is getting a little bit of second life?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Thanks for having me on. And I would say there is a revival. I think it was fueled recently. In fact, today, Mr. Putin visited with Jinping, and they traded bilateral documents, meaning it's the playbook that Sergei Glasiev, the Russian economist, authored of 1 gram of gold for a barrel of oil as a way to trade outside the SWIFT sanctions, the self-inflicted wound of the regime and the really piss poor foreign policy. So when you mentioned, I just heard you talking about King Kong on Twitter and these shops in China selling out of gold beans. You can think of it this way: when Gen Z, who's basically locked out of the economy in the United States, right? There's no affordable homes. They're not buying equities. But in China, the leadership is telling their people, even through TikTok, to stack these 1 gram at a time. You can almost look at that as a barrel of oil, which you couldn't strap on your back, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a smart strategy for these kids to start accumulating wealth. And what we're seeing, like, for instance, in India, of all places, just for Q1 of 2024, they bought more silver than they did all of 2023. So once this thing gets legs, and we always said, I think it was Peter Schiff who said, or it could have been Doug Casey, that once we see this momentum shift, it would be like trying to take the contents of Hoover Dam, which is Lake Mead, I believe, through a garden hose, in terms of that sort of what we would say is unavailable. And the silver squeeze now in US, it's sort of nothing. We don't like to say that because I have to answer to 270,000 retail apes, but I think we needed their leadership first as the spark, because we were just chopping sideways for 3 to 4 years. And today I just read in Shanghai, the market just closed a couple hours ago. It closed out at 32.63 silver.
Yeah. So, and that's a physical market. That's a more physical.
It's much more legitimate. And what we're learning is they can buy more oil through their gold proxy than they could before in London or in New York with the US dollar. So since everything we do in life is run by oil, why wouldn't you do that? Why would you use, they're also looking at the toxic orbit of the US dollar. It's being tethered to $34 trillion debt. It's enmeshed in, I don't know how many wars right now. Service on the debt is what? The largest line item in the U.S. budget. And the way they're dumping U.S. treasuries throughout BRICS++, which is 70% of the world, where are these treasuries going to come washing back, Ron? But can you guess where they're coming, Ron?
They're going to come back here, and that will create more inflation, right? And that'll mean the Fed will have to buy them and monetize the debt sooner. And I got to go because I need to run buy some silver or gold after I listen to you for the last 3 minutes.
Let's add to the story. There's no new discoveries of silver at all.
Yeah.
Then it gets worse. The number one country in the world has always been Mexico, by far. So their new Secretary of Environment, Miss Maria Luisa Albores Gonzalez, she's not allowing any more mining. She's got I follow her on Twitter, and all you see are pictures of Los Animales, the environment. She's not, so they're down 27% in just 19 months. Mm-hmm. Then moreover, you're looking at, let's take copper. Just yesterday, it's been on a tear too. It's up 25% since the beginning of January. And guess what? In Panama, one of the largest mines in the world is shut down. It's called La Cobre, and it's run by Quantum Materials out of Canada. So we're seeing more jurisdictional risk, no discoveries. And with this demand from aerospace, military, and solar just reached a terabyte. So let's remember what that is. That's right. 1,000 gigawatts. Each gigawatt is 500,000 ounces of silver. So 1,000 times 550 million ounces, excuse me.
Yeah.
550,000. So now we're over almost a year's supply, 550 million ounces, which is almost 1 year of mining. And that's just solar, and solar is in third place behind aerospace.
So, and I want to repeat this for our listener, for our basement dwellers. Many of them are silver stackers. Hold on to that silver that you have, because what Jon just said is that Mexico, the world's biggest producer in silver, that over the last few years, the amount of silver being produced in Mexico is down by 28%, right? That's a big deal. Now, I want to ask your opinion on this, Jon, because I think it's even maybe a little bit of the icing on the cake. We've had a strong run in the silver price, right? I mean, I think we're bumping up against $30 here in the United States right now. But we've all these factors that you've talked about, right? And even, the solar explosion and demand and the supply going down. But all this recent move and this strength in the silver price over the last couple of months has all occurred with very little interest. Maybe it's percolating, maybe it's getting a little better, but very little interest in the West, right? It's almost like silver did it. Like silver went out and ran the 100-yard dash and did it very well, had an awesome time, but silver was running into a 10 or 15 mile an hour headwind, which is really that Western investors were dumping silver.
They were. Well, what we're looking at has always been the problem with, for every 1 ounce of silver that, Ron, you have. Can you show people? I know.
Yeah. Oh, I've got plenty. I got an ounce here.
Yeah.
Here we go. This is from our friend Big Tim, the Silvershire.
Yeah, that's right. So for every one of those, there are up to 600 transactions on the paper market. So, wow. The best way to look at it is 2 days of trading, in futures, it equals 1 year of mining. So that's why Sergei Glasiev authored the Gold for Oil program, and silver just gets brought along, is to create arbitrage. So now at $33, if I can buy jeans at a thrift store in Pittsburgh and sell them, for $6 and sell them for $100 on Poshmark or in Europe, that is what we call arbitrage, when you can sell something in a different environment at a higher price. So China knew this. They knew that Western markets were rigging the price of silver through these derivative swaps, where no physical ever changes hands. So they're calling the bluff. And now that sucking sound you hear is physical metals moving from the west to the east. And let's remember, China, the two largest countries in the world are India just past China. So like you said earlier in the broadcast, if they get their people to even buy 1 ounce each, like the one you just held up,
yeah,
that's all the silver there is. There's less silver above ground than there is gold. And
yeah.
and you'll never hear that on Western media.
First Mining Gold is a development company advancing 2 of the largest gold projects in Canada. Springpole in Ontario and Duparquet, located in Quebec, each already has 5 million ounces of gold reserves, but exploration initiatives are underway at both projects to find even more gold. First Mining is well-financed, has 0 debt, and owns an interest in 4 additional Canadian gold development projects.
And we focus so much on China, and I'm guilty as well, but the story in India is just as compelling. I mean, I've heard that Indian households have 25,000 metric tons of gold alone, like more than 3 times what we supposedly have in Fort Knox. The story in India is crazy.
And let's also remember that in India, for the past 40 years, the U.S. industrialists and corporates, and I'd call them the parasitic class or the political class, they decided to ship jobs overseas for labor arbitrage. Mm-hmm. And in so doing, the middle class in India has exploded. So they can afford plenty of silver and gold. I would say their discretionary cash exceeds that of the average American, who we're seeing our purchasing power eroded through inflation. They're seeing their wealth protected through silver and gold. And why wouldn't they? They've been stung in the past. Remember, they were colonized by the Brits. And so they know what it feels like when there's a regime turnover, and that political instability is always a good tailwind for gold and silver.
So what does it tell us if we think about just India alone? 1.4 billion people, an economy, probably one of the fastest growing economies in the world, an economy that's rapidly increasing the size of their consumer or middle class, and a country where precious metals are woven into the fabric of the society. And that's just India. And there's 1.4 billion people. And there's also this stat that says that demographically, there's going to be more. India leads the world in terms of the next 15 years, I think it is, with the number of people just from a demographic perspective that are going to be reaching adulthood. So you got all these people reaching adulthood, all these people joining the middle class. And oh, by the way, their parents and grandparents I heard it said that once in India, the grandparents will tell their grandchildren to own your body weight in silver, and then to own as much gold as you possibly can.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And the other stat, people in the West are extremely, ethnocentric. Yeah. And they don't have this sort of critical thinking skills or curiosity in other people's cultures. And you got to remember, I'll give you another talking point. Carnegie Mellon right now in Pittsburgh is the only university in the world, or in the United States, North America, that is granting a PhD in robotics. And what do we know about the future of AI and robotics? Mm-hmm. And 90%, Ron, are Asian students that are in the education department. So and the reason being is because the U.S. citizens cannot pass the boards or have the transcript or even have the GME scores to get into the top engineering schools. So I have a personal rule when I have a physician is I'm hoping it's an Indian or someone from Asia, and that I guess that's some reverse form of racism. But I want someone that was paying attention in medical school, not distracted on social media or addicted to whatever the Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift are up to, or some Netflix series. I'd rather them have that. You hear about the tiger mothers that are, that's what I want when my doctor is slicing me open for the seventh time because I've had one too many cheeseburgers. But if they're stacking silver and gold, and central banks are, and the projection is the people are far outpacing the central banks, then it's just a matter of time. Silver's moved from $22 to $30 in just 2 months.
Yeah.
It's 25%. And Jim Rickards just pinned a piece yesterday on $27,000 gold. So
wow.
And Luke Groman is very conservative. He's got it at 20,000. And all it is that the reevaluation that occurs when the fiat, anytime there's a new regime or a new monetary system, gold sort of steps up, and you just take debt and you divide it by ounces above ground, and that's the new price of gold. So
yeah, do you think that and I'll raise my hand, I'm guilty of this, right? I mean, the thought of that happening seems I'm going to say unlikely. Like, there's part of me that says, yes, it's bound to happen. Right. But then there's another part, I think they call it normalcy bias or recency bias, where I'm like, well, it's not happened. It's, we're maybe now things are different. Do you think, though, if we look at history, that it's happened every time, every one of these fiat, fractional reserve, paper money, whatever you want to call it, systems, they've all collapsed. I know Lynette Zhang has piles of different paper money from all these different failed fiat currencies over the years. I think it's going to be I think it'll be shocking to guys like us. I think it'll be like, how do you think the average American will react to this, Jon?
Well, there'll be a lot of denial at first, but the patriotism will be replaced with reality. And what I think happens is, and you did reference Lynette Zhang, James Turk wrote a great article. He's written a few great books on gold. And when he talks about the Fiat Graveyard, I'm starting to write a graphic novel called Tarnished Crown, a graphic novel of silver wars and paper promises. And we start with the very first minted coins during the Peloponnesian War, and then we trace it all the way to today. And every single time the regime that fails is because they cling to warfare as their only economic engine. Mm-hmm. And once you've crossed that threshold, which Eisenhower warned in his farewell address, beware of the power of the military-industrial complex. And then when you have on top of that Congress, and we used to think of them as aristocracy would be maybe ruled by an elite few, or democracy ruled by the people, or even plutocracy ruled by, some sort of a smaller elite few. Now we have kleptocracy, which is theft, like kleptomaniac. Mm-hmm. They're funding both sides of these wars. And it's a heck of a lot easier to steal money once you take it overseas. That's why you see these projects voted by both Republicans and Democrats to keep funding Ukraine. It makes no sense. I think they're over 130 billion right now. And we've had 57 undeclared wars since World War II. And according to Ben Norton, 250 since the 1990s. So it makes sense. It's the only thing backing the dollar since 1971, Nixon closed the convertibility.
I'm going to interrupt you because that's burning. I'm going to ask you this question. Do you believe, because I've read it and it makes sense to me, but I'm curious to get your insight, that Nixon, one of the big reasons why Nixon took us off the gold standard temporarily, guys, don't forget, it's been a long temporary 44 years, nonetheless, temporarily took us off the gold standard, was because he needed money. I've heard two trains of thought, but they make sense with what you're saying. Number one, they needed money to pay for the Vietnam War, and number two, he needed money to kind of help fund some types of programs he wanted to put in place to help his potential reelection bid. Yeah,
Lynette Zhang, going back to her, she put a great graph out that shows right when he did shut the window, the frequency of wars shot up and to the right. And the reason that happens is if you and I were vice president and president, I'll let you be president.
No.
But if we were to go to the people and say, what do you think of this conflict in Somalia or this conflict in Afghanistan where we replaced the Taliban with the Taliban and it was at $2.3 trillion, 5 times the price of Vietnam? If we asked the people, our constituents, do you vote for this? They would say no. So a politician's always going to want an unconstrained monetary system. That thus, I would agree with the first part of your theory, is that it was to pay for Vietnam. And let's not forget that the president of France did show up with a Navy ship to get the gold back.
The gold, yeah.
So they started repatriating the gold. And at that point, Nixon knew that there wasn't enough in Fort Knox if other nations did likewise. So he had no choice but to shut off the gold convertibility. A central banker will always unwelcome gold because it provides competition for their financialized instrument.
So in 1971, if we'd stayed on the gold standard in this country, which, by the way, worked really well for what I've recently heard was 180 years. That was like 180 years where the United States, when we were on the gold and the bimetallic standard, where we had economic growth that has been unrivaled throughout history. But nonetheless, had Nixon stayed on the gold standard and wanted to do what he planned on doing in the future, he would have had to gone to the United States citizenry and said, "Are you in favor of this? Oh, and by the way, if you are, because we're on the gold standard, we can't just create money out of thin air. We're going to have to lower your social benefits. We're going to have to raise taxes," right? I mean, they actually the gold standard forces a real discipline of accountability upon the government. Is that safe?
Yeah, I would say a constrained monetary system keeps politicians from going on crazy adventures.
A little more honest.
Yeah, I don't think the entitlement programs are much of a drain on our system. I mean, people that have fed into Social Security all their lives certainly deserve that benefit.
Yeah.
Children who are the victims of abuse and neglect need protection. We do need fire, police, roads, bridges. There's plenty of money for that in the budget. What we don't need are Lockheed Martin, Marietta, Halliburton, Northrop, Raytheon, and Los Alamos and Sandia Labs mooching. I call that more like corporate welfare of the parasitic class. So there's a way to have a good defense, but defense should be when the troops arrive on your shores. You shouldn't be out there going on adventures that are like you're a rogue state and you're on these unilateral adventures just to basically steal other people's gold and oil. I believe Iraq still has to settle all of their oil through the Federal Reserve. Mm-hmm. So you got to, and ask Libya, Gaddafi, how it went for him when he started talking about gold. It didn't end well. It's almost like it didn't end well for the poor Aztecs or when Pizarro showed up one day. It's very similar to Rome's playbook, where Severus Septimus said to his son on his deathbed, "Take care of the soldiers and scorn everyone else." Those were his dying words. Yeah. He said to and they took him seriously, and soldiers were well paid, and the citizenry, or the 1%, they were given bread and circuses. So bread was a bit of their stipend for grains, and the circuses were the Colosseum games. And Ron, as much as you and I like Colosseum games, let's admit that the U.S. and Rome are going down the same path of where the citizens are distracted and the leaderships are involved in unending wars.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on top of that, we know that we're hearing reports that more and more countries are making moves to repatriate their gold back from the United States.
That's exactly right. And that gold will not be there. Maybe the first truck will get loaded and then they'll shut it off again.
Yeah.
Watch this unfurl in real time. Sure, there's still going to be the US dollar. It's just not backed by anything. And if you got it, let's think of just what happened in the last month. Janet Yellen goes to visit with President Xi Jinping, and he doesn't even meet with her.
If you're looking to buy gold, silver, or platinum, do yourself a favor and check out Pimbex, the online precious metals bullion dealer and sponsor of Ron's Basement. I was a happy customer before they offered to support the channel. You'll find they have the best prices, quality, and service. I think Pimbex is best, and you will too. And be sure to tell them that you're from Ron's Basement.
Think of the train metaphor. If we had the time during the Industrial Revolution where we had coal firing up the steam engine, and then we were lucky enough to discover oil near Pittsburgh in Oil City, which was not that long ago.
Right.
Now we're at this new transition where we'll never phase out fossil fuels, nor should we. We're going to need all the energy. And solar, again, 1 gigawatt equals 500,000 ounces of silver. So we're all bullish on these industrial uses of silver. But in history, when silver goes on its biggest bull run is when it has a monetary use as well. And that's why this thing happening with Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and this architected through Sergei Glasiev, this is why we're seeing silver go on a bull run right now. And there'll be some sideways chopping and some minor pullbacks. But once the West loses control of market rigging, we should see its true discovery. You know, no one knows what that number is. You can either say the dollar is, like you had said earlier, the cleanest shirt in the dirty pile of laundry, or you can just, I think Mike Maloney says things like, hey, guess what? An ounce of silver today is 1/29th of a dollar. That's how he says it that way, which is a good way to look at it.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I know. And I like what you're talking about.
No, I mean, the dollar's 1/29th. Excuse me.
That dollar's 1/29th of an ounce, right? Because people will jump down my throat all the time because I'll say, you know, oh, we could have $60 silver. We could have, you know, we could have $200 silver. We could have $600. We could have, like, you know, 50,000. It just depends on how quickly.
Weak the dollar is.
Yeah, exactly. How many pieces of paper, right? I mean, I was showing this earlier, John. This is a silver certificate, right? It looks a lot like a dollar, but it says right at the top, silver certificate, right? This is just a paper dollar. I mean, it's nothing. And we could get to a point where, I mean, what it really depends on is how quickly and to what extent the dollar devalues in the future. And when we look at the gold market and the silver market, and it's just fascinating the different dynamics going on in both of them right now. You know, silver with its industrial component, but and gold with its, you know, monetary component that is becoming just more and more prevalent throughout the world. But then silver also with its monetary component, but its industrial component. And then you throw copper into the mix, and what's going on with copper right now. And I'll argue, you know, silver's kind of in the, let me ask you this question. Do you see silver kind of in the middle? Like gold is the godfather of precious metals. And then you have silver that's a precious metal related to gold, but silver is also an industrial metal. And you could say it's related to copper. Does that?
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. You're setting up what I call the triumvirate. I mean, you got, you got to remember too, we found research going back to when John B. Stevens testified before Congress. And if people write me, I'll give them the 70-page transcript that where U.S. couldn't even really maintain a copper standard, which is pathetic. Now, if you think of the fact that a penny now, I think, is melt value may be worth up to 3 cents. Maybe.
Yep. Yeah. James Anderson, I shared it yesterday, tweeted a picture of, he said, sorry, Abraham, you know, to Abraham Lincoln. It's like, you're worth more melted down 3 cents.
Get James on your show. You had him, didn't you?
Yeah, I had him. Yeah, great guy.
Yeah. He is just a bright kid, and I call everybody a kid. You're a kid. I mean, you are. I mean, you got. I won't talk about your family photos because there may be some nefarious guy.
I had children later in life, though.
Yeah, well, no, but they're just adorable. And
thank you.
I do want to let the viewers know that I'm going to be in the Four Corners soon.
Cool.
working on a silver filtration project. Silver also purifies water with clay on the reservation, as well as pinon. And I'm going to eat at the chili pod. It's delicious. Ron, I'm telling you, this is going to be the best dinner ever.
Fortuna Silver Mines is a global intermediate gold and silver producer. Since 2005, Fortuna's best-in-class management has delivered impressive growth and profits. Fortuna's solid financial position and operational expertise allows for performance in any precious metals price cycle and provides a foundation from which to harvest great profits in more favorable metals markets. Investing in Fortuna is an investment in quality, long-term, sustainable production of in-demand precious and base metals. I think this is exciting, and I showed this earlier, so hopefully you'll be able to see this as well. Here we go. Have you seen this slide from Tavi Costa? Did you see this one that shows the amount of
Ron, I get most of my information from Ron's basement. He's awesome, though. Show me what it is.
Can you see it up on the screen right now?
I can. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that shows gold and gold miners as a percentage of total global assets. To me, that's just mind blowing. And I know you follow some of the mining stocks as well.
I would look at it this way, everyone. This is the simplest way to look at it. If you take Exter's pyramid, and remember, Mr. John Exter was a member of the Federal Reserve. He wasn't some insane gold enthusiast like Ron of Ron's Basement or John of the Silver Academy. He was, I would say he was on the other side if we were to paint him out as an enemy. But he admitted that all of these assets, if we just take global debt, is over. There it is. Okay.
Your wish is my command, Master.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. But the gold market there. So let's just take U.S. debt at 34 trillion. World debt's at 303 trillion. Derivatives are in the quadrillions, folks. But the gold market right now is only 15 trillion, and silver is 1/10 of that. Yeah. So I think what you're seeing, that's sort of the other way to represent Tavi's chart. And think of it just like a burning candle wax, just dripping towards those are the only, I would say that, and maybe a house or something that's tangible. Maybe I got some artwork behind me that I think that will retain its value. Some people, I heard the author of The Creature of Jekyll Island talk about, you may want to get a garage and fill it up with, red or white wine. I mean, people have done that before. So collect art, collect. But I'm just trying to be a simple man, Ron, and take care of my family and not let the dollar eat into things that the quality of life, like your housing, education, medical needs, food, energy. They don't even count some of those things in the CPI, Ron.
Right.
What is that?
Right.
They talk about it. What is a basket of my basket's different than your basket, Ron. I just saw my mom. She's 87. Her basket looks nothing like our basket, in South Dakota or in Pittsburgh. It's insane.
Yeah. You made me think of something that I thought this was very funny. At one of the Missouri politicians who's involved in the legal tender legislation was a guest here in the basement. And he said, one of my constituents is like 87 years old, like you referred to your mother, and he said this 87-year-old man told him that he's amazed at how much stronger he's getting physically as he gets older, because he used to have to use a cart to push $100 worth of groceries out of the grocery store, and now he can carry it in 2 bags.
Oh my gosh!
So
I don't want to depress everyone, because there is hope. And the hope is in our brains, in our hearts, in our souls, positive visions, manifest. And what you do here today, Ron, when you get 700, 800, 900 people together and you're up to already 35,000 subscribers in a really short time, it's basically it's like a church service, but we're not dogmatic, or demagogues or judgmental. Yeah. It's all faiths, all creatures, all cultures, coming up with strategies that are going to, almost like if you were to train us on how to get through a 2-week wilderness camp. It's survival skills. And I wanted to show my gratitude to you for that.
Oh man, well, and you know how I and most all of my followers that also are subscribed to you at Silver Academy, the Pickaxe, feel about you as well. And that's really what it's all about, is we're trying to protect ourselves, protect our families. And I don't think that any of us are have dreams of becoming wildly wealthy or anything like that. We wouldn't argue with that. But I think what we're really about is community and helping each other out. I want to ask you one more quick question on Exter's pyramid before I put it down. When I look at it, I see gold and silver as the only real things in that, and everything above gold and silver, interestingly, are all kind of like man-made, confidence-based, make-believe instruments. And when I look at that pyramid, what excites me about gold and silver, and I appreciate you pointing this out, this pyramid was designed by a guy who worked for the New York Federal Reserve. And this wasn't like in the 1800s or anything. He just died I think 10 or 12 years ago, right. John Exter. But when I look at that pyramid, and I want to get your opinion on this, John, if I'm falsely deluding myself and my followers by saying this, if I think of it like a real pyramid made out of stones, right? And it's an upside down pyramid and gold and silver at the bottom, that when I think of pieces of the derivative, one of the stones out of the derivatives market falls out, when one of the stones out of the bank money falls out, if people lose, that as that money falls out, that and that those segments of that pyramid are much more massive than the gold and silver at the point. But as those stones fall out, they need to find a new home, and that new home is going to be, I guess that's Gresham's law, right? In the gold and silver sector. And it's that old Hoover Dam being drained with a garden hose type scenario.
Yeah, you said it really, I can't improve on that. The only thing I could say to people is that gold is a noble metal, meaning that it is the most resistant to interference with gases and corrosion and things of that nature. And silver is the #1 conductor of electricity, as well as reflectivity, and the most ductile and the most malleable. So, and they're both on the periodic chart of elements, as well as copper. So that's what I think I hear you saying, is they're of nature. The other things on there are basically let's just call them a derivative, is something that derives value from an underlying asset. So,
or confidence, right? Or so what's the first three? Sorry, but what are the first 3 letters of confidence? Con, right? A con job. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. No, I can't. I think we're vibing pretty well. I almost feel like it went so well that you should say goodbye to me before I have this.
Before we say goodbye, John, and #1, thank you. And before we say goodbye, I almost forgot. I want to do this, which is one of the most important things. I want to bring people out to one of your Substacks. This is the Silver Academy, guys. Do yourself a favor. Okay, if you're going to buy precious metals, check out Pimbex, throw them into the mix. But if you're going to learn about silver, gold, sign up for John's Substack. This is just one of them. The link is in the description of this and every single piece of content I put out. John, anything you want to say about your Substacks, or anything I missed that you?
No, just adding them to the description field's plenty. You've been such a supporter of our movement. Again, though, this is just about the community and us. I learned as much from you and your listeners and followers. So let's just continue this march, stay tough, persevere, and you never give up. Never, there's days that are going to suck, if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube. Anyway.
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks, John. We'll look forward to having you on next time. Anything I forgot to ask you? Anything?
No, we're good, Ron. You're an angel from heaven, and I'm glad I follow you on. Seriously, I mean that. And thank you to your followers too.
Thank you, John. And the feelings are mutual. And like I said before you came on, right, you're my mom's favorite, so she's going to be happy you were on the show today.
Well, she may adjust that after today's lesson, but we'll see. Take care, everybody.
Yep.
It's good visiting with all of you.
Yep. See you, Jon. Thank you.
All right. Stay awesome.
All right. Thanks, buddy. All right, guys. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time. And everybody have a great day. Okay. It's a big deal that you support us. We appreciate it. Jon Little, what a great guy. I mean, really puts in a ton of work for the silver and gold community, but it's something that he believes in. It's something that I believe in. I think it's something you believe in too. Take care of yourself. Okay.